Before we get into the heart of the presentation, I want to frame this session by building upon some of the themes that Jay actually outlined in his presentation yesterday. Secure, simple, and productive. Now, how does data protection apply relative to those particular themes? We're all executing in this era of AI, which means that your data is your greatest competitive advantage. Your data is your greatest competitive advantage. Now, should you get breached, your data can represent one of your greatest liabilities. So, with that frame, how can you actually secure your business's most valuable assets while still making it available for collaboration and sharing and accelerate competitive advantage and differentiation? So, to take a look at that, let's look at essentially what's happened in the evolution of data protection. There was a point in time when I could say a statement like, my data, it's on across my 3 global data centers. I knew exactly where my data was. I knew who had access to it. I could even put it behind lock and key and then monitor who is actually accessing it from that standpoint. Cloud and mobility came about, and it changed the problem from a 2-dimensional model to a multidimensional model. The average enterprise holds data across 2 or more public clouds. It utilizes 25 data store types and has thousands of data store instances. Now, that's completely separate from the hundreds of IT applications that are sanctioned by your IT group that are SaaS, much less the thousands of unsanctioned applications that your data is distributed against. Now, this challenge or this problem set has created a tremendous amount of point products looking to address and patch each one of these particular areas. And the complexity has created not just a tremendous amount of offerings that are doing point solutions, but it's created also an alphabet soup of categories that, for all intents and purposes, is very difficult to stitch together for a comprehensive data security strategy, much less platform. If you think about what it presents you with, in each one of these areas, there is nothing about this picture that is secure, simple, and productive. So, when you think about it from that standpoint, it's also compounded by the fact that data will continue to grow. And inside of your enterprise, probably grow even more in accelerated fashion because of generative AI. And then you couple that with IT organizations' need to actually secure their cloud-native development environments and secure their software development life cycles. They want to take advantage of all the things that come from continuous integration and continuous development, but at the same time frame, don't want to create greater exposure, roughly, for data exfiltration. So, when you think about this problem, what Zscaler did was built a unified data protection platform across all channels that's integrated with our cloud-native application protection that we refer to as posture control. It informs of where the data actually is, identifies what data is sensitive. Then, it gives me visibility and assures that I'm configured properly and compliant, gives me visibility of the identities that have access to data and who or what might be overprivileged, tells me what data might be exposed to the open internet, as well as be compromised through some known vulnerability. And lastly, through the power of being inline through Zscaler's Zero Trust Exchange, it gives you the ability to apply data protection policies across the endpoint, email, and SSL-inspected payloads. And lastly, to manage unmanaged devices, it has the ability then to just stream pixels to a BYOD device rather than actually the data itself, continuing on with giving productivity, but eliminating the data transfer altogether. So what I'd like to do right now is turn the stage over to Moinul Khan, our General Manager and VP of Data Protection, who will take us one step deeper into the innovations that we've made in this data protection platform.
Thank you, Willie. Good morning. It is an honor to represent Zscaler's product and engineering team who work so hard behind the scene to make us successful and our customers successful. In the last 6 months, data protection team delivered 70+ new features. The speed of innovation in this company never stops. It's just amazing. The features that we have delivered solves a lot of real customers' problem. Now, if you look at this list of features, these features are, at the end of the day, means to an end. So the real question is, what is our purpose? What is it that we are trying to achieve? We want to protect our customers from all kinds of data breaches by delivering a very comprehensive, fully integrated data security solution with the least amount of complexity. For our customers, we want to answer 4 basic questions. Where is my data? Can I classify them? Who has access to my data? And can I enforce consistent security policy? And of course, we want to do this with simplicity. So now, we have been in this journey for the last 8 years. Over the last 8 years, we delivered a very sophisticated data classification engine with hundreds of predefined dictionaries, file types, very flexible custom regular expression engine. With the advanced data classification side, we delivered exact data match, IDM, document fingerprinting, OCR. We integrated our data protection solution with Microsoft AIP and MIP. We took that stack and started monitoring your web traffic. Essentially, we delivered WebDLP. Then we took the same stack and we integrated that stack with our multi-mode CASB. CASB in forward proxy mode, with out-of-band API, with browser isolation. The same engine was leveraged to protect your data in private applications through ZPA connection. We utilize the same engine to protect your data in public cloud infrastructure, endpoint, and for your corporate email. So as you can see, we had quite a bit of journey over the last 8 years. In the next few minutes, I would like to focus on some of the new innovations and features that we have rolled out. So the first one I want to talk about is AI ML-powered auto data classification and enforcement. Very recently, we released our auto data classification behind the scene. We used a lot of very sophisticated ML algorithms. We used things like stemming, lemmatization, grouping of words. We used NLP, natural language processing. But essentially, what we did is, whatever data that we have seen on the wire, we have put that data into different thematic document categories without you creating a single DLP policy. Now, with the latest release, all these document classification is now extended for policy enforcement. So you can build a very powerful DLP classification engine by combining these document categories with your predefined dictionaries and custom dictionaries. And then, of course, you can take that engine and start enforcing policies within DLP. Now, when you enforce these policies, of course, you want to coach your users, you want to notify your users. In the past, the notification options were browser, Slack connector, Teams connector, and email. But now with the latest release, our client connector can do the notification and coaching. As you know, the client connector is installed on 50 million endpoints. Every time we see a DLP violation, client connector will pop up a message, and it will start notifying the user. User can justify their transaction. So that's pretty cool. What about admin users? We made the DLP and CASB incident management very easy for the admin users with Zscaler's workflow automation. Every single incident has a unique incident ID. On the front end, you are going to see all kinds of metadata. At the same time, on the front end, we are showing you the trigger data. And we are giving you the exact link where we are storing your entire payload in your own cloud environments like an S3 bucket. All right. So now, when you see all these violations, you, of course, want to take actions. There are a lot of actions available, and one of the actions is escalation. So you can take an incident, and you can escalate it to people manager, perhaps VPs of the BU. You can escalate this incident to even your HR. Essentially, we enabled you to engage other key stakeholders in your organization so everyone participates in data security program. Okay, next topic, very popular nowadays, generative AI and data protection. Yesterday, in the keynote, Sanjay talked about some of the cool technologies that we are currently working on. Soon, these technologies like multimodal DLP will be released. But today, I'm going to demonstrate some of the capabilities that we have built that you can leverage right now. So the first one is cloud app control. As you know, we support about 40,000 cloud applications with very granular control. The idea is, I don't want to be a sledgehammer. I want to enable users to use these applications, but I want to enforce granular policy. So in the latest release, we are now supporting applications like ChatGPT and other AI, generative AI application. So with that support, you can be very granular. Instead of blocking the app, you can select the app in Cloud App Control policy, and you can caution the user. You can allow the user with notification. Of course, you can flat out block this application, but also you can put that entire session under browser isolation. Better yet, you can make these policies even more granular if you bring the DLP engine. So in this particular case, I'm saying developers in my company cannot upload source code to ChatGPT. So this is how you enforce a very granular policy to empower your users. The next topic, data protection for BYOD and unmanaged asset. It's a very complex problem. There is no footprint on the device. These are unmanaged assets connecting to your SaaS platforms directly over the internet. Now, in the past, we solved that problem with isolation proxy. We combined our SAML proxy with browser isolation, and then whenever users were accessing those SaaS applications, we would put them in browser isolation. Now, that feature required some application settings change. You would change the IDP settings. In some organizations, identity team don't like to change that settings. So with the latest release, we actually made it better. So today, from our app portal, we can host both SaaS-based application and your private application. When the user clicks on the SaaS-based application, we basically taking the user through forward proxy, and we are putting the entire session into a browser-isolated session. And then when the session is within browser isolation, you can enforce very granular policy. You can say, cut and paste is not allowed. Upload and download is not allowed. You can say, printing is not allowed. And more interestingly, you can actually put the session you can actually put a watermark on that web browser session so that your users cannot take a screenshot and exfiltrate that data. And then last but not least, of course, you can make that browser isolation session even more granular if you bring the DLP engine. So in this case, you are saying download is allowed, but PII download is not allowed. All right, next topic, endpoint DLP. First of all, we are not introducing another agent in the company. We are leveraging the same agent that you are using for ZIA, ZPA, and ZDX. So when our endpoint DLP module gets installed, it will fetch the configuration from the cloud. It will look at all the DLP dictionaries and engines that you have built, and it will start scanning the data on the endpoint, which is essentially data at rest. So as we are scanning, we know which data is sensitive, which data is not sensitive, and we maintain a local copy on the endpoint. And then our policy gets enforced at the time of data in transition. In other words, if the users were to copy these sensitive files to a removable disk, to a USB stick, perhaps uploading that file to network share or to the local printer, or even there is a sync client downloaded on the machine, for all of those channels, we are going to be able to enforce a block policy. We have built a new dashboard for endpoint DLP as well, so you can track all the violations based on severity, based on actions, and based on different channels. The next topic, email DLP. In the past, we protected your data on Corporate Exchange and Gmail with our out-of-band API CASB. We were monitoring all your outbound emails, and we were looking at the subject line, email body, and attachments, and anytime we saw a violation, we sent an alert. With the latest release now, we can protect your Corporate Exchange and Gmail inline at real time. We are cracking open MAPI over HTTPS traffic. We are cracking open OWA. We are inspecting the content. And more importantly, we are parsing all the receivers and senders so that you can build a very granular email policy based on specific users and specific domains. Next topic, SaaS supply chain security, AppTotal. This is the latest addition in the portfolio. As you are embracing more and more SaaS platforms, applications like Office 365, Google, Atlassian Suite, Okta, Slack, your users are connecting hundreds of third-party apps and browser extensions to these SaaS applications. These applications are connecting over OAuth token and API connection. There's a lot of communications happening SaaS to SaaS, putting your data at risk, and you have no visibility. With AppTotal, within minutes, we are going to be able to identify and discover all of those applications. We are going to be able to tell you which ones are good, which ones are bad. We will also tell you which applications are dormant. Users connected those applications, but never used them. The tool has a prioritization process. It is not going to overwhelm you with hundreds of alerts, but it will tell you which high priority alerts that you should double click on. So in this environment, we found an application, a user connected called OneDrive Free Client. Now, when users connect this application, automatically this application has access, read-only access, to all the files and folders. When we did some research on this application, we found out this app is an open source app. When you click on the evidence link, it will show you that this is an open source app because you can find the source code in a publicly available Git repo. Now, when we further research on this app, we found out that this application is leaking secrets. Once again, when you click on the evidence link and you look at the source code, you will see that client ID and secrets are hard-coded. And that's pretty messed up because if I'm a bad guy, I can build my own application. I can use the same client ID and client secret, and then I can connect directly to your corporate OneDrive, and I can get read-only access to all your files and folders. Okay, so when you see these type of violations, what do you want to do? You can inject yourselves in the vetting process. You can send a user notification via Slack or email. You can ask the user, why are you connecting this type of applications? You can be a sledgehammer. You can actually take a hard action. You can disconnect the app by revoking the token, and then now the application is completely disconnected. Thank you. All right, I spend a lot of time talking about data security for web, data security for SaaS and CASB, endpoint, and email. What about my data in the public cloud infrastructure? Perhaps I have petabytes of data sitting in S3 bucket, VMs and containers in my data lake. And that's when our CNAPP and data security solution comes together to deliver a very powerful solution. So in the past, we delivered CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management, to identify your cloud misconfigurations and compliance violations. We supported AWS, Azure, and GCP. In the latest release, we are now supporting Oracle Cloud. For CSPM, we are now supporting Kubernetes, which is our new KSPM module. We have also delivered CIEM, Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management. Essentially, we are looking at human identities, non-human identities. We are looking at permissions and excessive permissions. We also delivered vulnerability scanning. We are scanning your infrastructure, operating systems, as well as images. Now, all of these modules, all these checks and balances are available for both build time and runtime. And what that really means is we are supporting shift-left security. We are supporting infrastructure as a code. In other words, you can take all of those signatures that we have built, and you can integrate them into your CI/CD pipeline. If you are using CI/CD tools like CloudFormation templates, Jenkins, GitHub, GitLab, all of those tools can integrate our CSPM, CIEM, and vulnerability scanning. Now, with the latest release, we are double-clicking on your data. So what we have done is we are now scanning your sensitive data, your unstructured data on VMs and containers with our same DLP classification engine. We take, let's say you are running an application on an EC2. We will take a snapshot. We will dump that snapshot into another EC2 instance in your environment where we are running our local DLP scanner, and we will immediately identify if you have sensitive PCI, PII, PHI-related data. At the same time, we are scanning your S3 bucket, Azure Blob, and GCP storage with the same DLP policy. Again, looking for sensitive data, looking for sensitive unstructured data. Now, all these individual modules are great, but when you bring them together, that makes it very powerful, and that's exactly what we are doing with our cloud threats and correlated threats. We are bringing intelligence from CSPM, CIEM, vulnerability scanning, and data security, and we are joining all these data sources together so that when we generate an alert, it is super, super powerful. For example, we will tell you, you have an EC2 instance which has an outside-in connection. In the same EC2 instance, you are storing your PII data, and then the same EC2 instance is vulnerable. And that is powerful because we are giving you actionable insights. All right, so I talked about a lot of new features, talked a lot about new innovations. What's next? What do we do with this information? For the last 25 years, all of us have done data security with the lens of incident and compliance. With the world of cloud and mobility, we need to start thinking differently. We have to start thinking about business-driven data security. We need to enable our businesses, our users, so that they can directly contribute to the top line and bottom line. Last week, I was in Washington, D.C. in Gartner conference, and I met one of the analysts, and he used an analogy that resonated very well with me. So here's the scenario that he laid out. He said, a tourist from Midwest goes to New York City for the first time. He's super excited. He's in Times Square. He's eating street food. He's doing a lot of shopping. He's taking a lot of pictures. And boom, he crashes. He falls down. He has a massive heart attack. People call 911. Ambulance show up. Paramedics jump in. And right at that time, the paramedics, the only thing they know about this patient is his first name, his last name, his address, and his date of birth, and nothing else. They actually need a lot more information just for that moment to revive this patient. They take the patient to a hospital in New York City. The same situation for oncologists, even for doctors. They don't have all the data they need right there and then to save that patient. And that is business-driven data security is all about. We all know PHI data is sensitive. It needs to be protected. But at the same time, it needs to be accessible for the right people at the right time. And we are here to help you with that journey. If you want to implement a stringent policy, focus on incident and compliance, of course we support that. But you need to think about collaboration. Perhaps blocking all data going to the cloud application is not a good idea. But if your users are uploading Office documents to pdfconverter.com, that's a good use case for blocking. Collaboration, it's a good thing, but the collaboration needs to be allowed with the trusted partners. If you want to encrypt your PHI data, if you want to mask your credit card information, do that, but not necessarily at all times. When you are looking at an S3 bucket, of course, we are all looking for open S3 bucket, but try to understand what's in it and who has access to that data. Same thing for the endpoint. Blocking USB is not going to work. Users will find a way. Perhaps selective blocking is what we need to think about, because then your employees feel empowered. They feel that they are part of the decision-making process. And with that, I would like to thank you for taking the time. I'm bringing Willie back to the stage with John Graham, CISO of NetJets, and Gene Cassidy, Deputy CISO of Equinix, to close out this session. Thank you.
Fantastic. Just amazing stuff that we're actually doing in data protection. And I really want to thank John and Gene to come up here and actually share some of their experiences with us. John, I'm going to start with you. NetJets. Your clientele utilizes jets about the same way that this room uses Ubers. Right. And so you have a unique use case scenario, especially on data protection. Also the fact that your branch offices can be flying at 30,000 feet or anywhere actually in the world. So I'd love for you to just share with the audience a little bit about your journey relative to data protection and how you utilized Zscaler relative to the goals that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely, Willie. So, and the first answer is no, I didn't fly on one of our planes out here. So we don't get to do that. We get to catch them when we move an aircraft. And a lot of people don't understand we're a private airline. Today, we have today around 1,000 flights. About 640 of those have people on it, and then we have about 400 moving aircraft to position them. Some of the things that we did when I joined in April of 2020 is we looked around and we said, hey, we have a really good program, but the program is focused on keeping the walls up, keeping the bad guys out, and that kind of a basis. And when I talked to each of the executive leaders, they kept saying, well, we're really concerned about the data, the information itself that we have on our customer base. So we configure an aircraft for an individual customer. So if you think about the amount of information we need on a person, like what kind of magazines do they like to read? What are they like in terms of drinks on the plane, or what type of food, or who are their family members that are going to be flying with them? So we have this myriad of information that we keep on every individual that flies with us, and it's super sensitive. We fly an elite group of people around the world. We have around 10 to 12,000 customers at this point in time. And so what we did was we said, okay, the proof of concept to actually bring Zscaler in was a data-oriented concept. We had a red teamer, and we said, how much can you pull out of Salesforce today? And they were able to pull 1,000 records at a time. We had no log of it. We had no way to tell what was going on, where the data was going. And we utilized the Zscaler team to actually prove not only could we see it, we could actually stop it. And within the first few months of putting it in, we had an interesting thing happen, because we weren't trying to solve data classification. We were actually trying to change culture. And we had a hit on a sales rep who was trying to send to 100 customers their own personal charity golf tournament. And they were trying to do it in Gmail, their own personal Gmail. We had it configured so we could see the email get drafted, and then Zscaler would not allow the individual to send it. So we had all the evidence to go have a conversation with this individual. So it proved itself out right away within the first few months.
Fantastic, John. Really appreciate that. Maybe we change gears, Gene. Equinix, most folks that arrived here for this session probably passed through some form of Equinix digital infrastructure on the way here. So number one, you're on your own cloud journey. I'd love for you to actually share a little bit about that. But probably the other thing that is important actually for us and customers like both you and John is that you've been a design partner for us and been with us from the beginning with our posture control product. So could you share a little bit about essentially the journey to the cloud and how Zscaler actually kind of allowed itself to help you actually get there? And then last of all, as a design partner, what are you looking for roughly in a CNAPP product as we go forward?
Yep. Thanks, Willie. I had to write this down because CNAPP, which is a fairly new term coined by Gartner, there's no less than 8 different cloud security controls that falls under CNAPP. So I had to write all these acronyms down. But I think for the most part, everyone starts out with a CASB, right? It's easy. CASB, you put in there and you kind of see where your people are going and what data they're putting there. Secondly, you typically, once you start building in the cloud, you implement a cloud security posture management type platform. You want to have visibility into what's going on. You want to make sure those immutable environments don't have any config drifts, and most importantly, also compliance reasons as well. And then in parallel, your dev teams are building workloads and containers and also building infrastructure as code. So you also need to have visibility into those areas as well. And that's where probably is the greatest challenge for a lot of security teams, because that's a muscle that they simply don't have. And this is that DevOps pipeline where security really has to inject themselves because everything is moving as a code. Now, once we implemented that, we started noticing just so many access to these environments. Privilege access, we were trying to limit it. There's human accounts, service accounts. So we really had to kind of adopt more of a SIM, cloud identity entitlements management platform, also for just-in-time API key rotations, and just really to enforce the zero trust principles of least privilege. On top of that, now we have all these orchestration engines on the back end that manage all our distributed and ephemeral environments. So now there's something called Kubernetes security as a posture management security control as well. Then here comes the data privacy teams asking about data classification, data sovereignty, data residency, and so hence is born data security posture management, DSPM. Well, how about those SaaS apps that we're all using, like Workday, Salesforce, right? We don't own the actual SaaS app, but we own the administration of them. So here comes SSPM now to try to help manage the control plane and the administration of those things. And then lastly, I actually read about this one on the way to the conference. You guys all know about EDRs, NDRs, XDRs, and now there's CNDRs, Cloud Network detection and response, which is a more cloud threat-specific analytics. So when you take all of this together, our journey has been anything but smooth, very turbulent on the way, but also very exciting as well.
Fantastic. You know, Gene, just close it out with a little bit about what we'd expect to see from a CNET platform being one of our design partners and also being an adopter of our platform as a whole.
Yep. So selfishly, I wanted to influence the outcomes of this platform because it is a growing space. Additional security controls keep getting added to it. And I just really wanted to gain efficiencies really in 3 areas: cost, integration, and operations. Cost, I'm no dummy, but I am a product of public school math, and trying to navigate the licensing acrobatics of multiple vendors and their cloud schemas is very, very challenging for someone like me. So consolidating to one platform by one vendor, it just makes those SKUs so much easier. It's the easy button for me. From an integration standpoint, better integration equals better automation. And there's no amount of stitch work I could do with disparate solutions to create a more automated platform as the synergies you would gain from one vendor having that native compatibility. And this, going back to my public school math, this is where going to that platform would be 1 + 1 = 3 for me. And then lastly, operations. I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but single pane of glass, right? It's something that is not achievable, but it should be something that all vendors should strive for. Because the less consoles I have to look at to manage and respond, ultimately better. But none of this is really game-changing per se, because all competitors are going to consolidate and have feature parity with CNAPP. So what I'm most excited about is to see how Zscaler will apply AI and ML models cross-functionally to my unique data sets to produce more accurate and actionable alerts.
Gene, John, thank you very much for your partnership and your business. For those of you who are more interested in maybe some more detail relative to data protection and our posture control products, please attend these breakouts. We're more than happy to actually do really deep dives as well as some personal engagements. We'll have product experts in each one of these sessions. Thank you very much.
All right.